We can just start by please introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name's Sarah Wisner. Um,
Sean Temple.
we are filmmakers based in Montpellier, Vermont. We made the short film The Thaw this year, or 2023, and
It's almost actually been a year since
yeah,
we filmed.
and we're very excited to screen at White River. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, heck yeah. Can you share with me a little bit about like what has your filmmaking career been like in Vermont? I know lots of people, it's not the first place you think of when you think of filmmaking happening, but can you share a little bit about what it's been like for you too?
Yeah, well, we lived in Boston for a bit and Los Angeles for a bit, and we found that, and we both grew up in Vermont, and we found that for most of our films, we would travel back to Vermont to shoot here. So it actually made a lot more sense for us to be based here for that's part of the reason.
I think growing up here, we've just always been drawn to the area, and we kind of naturally think of stories that typically take place in a place like Vermont. And there's been a couple of times where we thought about filming other places, but we ultimately came back to filming in Vermont because it was our home and it always felt right for our stories.
Oh, that makes sense. Because I was wondering, is it maybe like the landscape or like the setting that drew you to filming here, or was it like maybe the state offers, I don't know, are there grant opportunities or things that you were finding were easier to find in Vermont versus a more production, heavy place?
I think it's more so that we have family resources here. I don't think we've had that much luck with grants or other funding, but we have folks who are willing to put us up and feed us and all of these great things that make films possible.
And like my mom lives in Ludlow, and I think she's cooked on almost every
movie
film we've made.
Homemade
one.
services. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Or we've had cast and crew stay at Sarah's parents.
Yeah.
Things like that have been pretty very needed
Yeah.
for our films. We have an older movie called Water Horse that took place at a lake house. Sarah's family had a lake house. So we just filmed there instead of trying to find somewhere else.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. So partly about making the most of the resources that we have access to when we're shooting on a budget. And partly it is that I think the stories that we're drawn to belong here.
That makes a lot of sense.
Especially as horror filmmakers, there's just a different kind of vibe in New England than I think some other places that, I think everyone's drawn to Stephen King films and books. And I think part of that is the New England kind of setting and the different kind of history and just feelings that it helps create. And obviously a movie like The Thaw, which is a Vermont story, had to be here.
Yeah. You mentioned budget, and I'm a little bit curious, and I know people would be interested to know. I know that filmmaking, I don't know, it seems, especially from the outside, like incredibly daunting, and like it's something that you can't really do unless you have, Hollywood level budgets and those kinds of resources. But can you share with me what it's like for you budgeting for a film? What do you take into account? Where are places that you were able to stretch or, grow or that kind of thing?
Well, it can really vary from project to project.
Which ours
have. So we've shot we have a short film that we shot in our apartment's basement in one night with one flashlight that cost basically
$200.
no money. Yeah. But that was shot in the context of grad school. So you have access to certain resources through the school that you would have to pay for otherwise.
And fellow students.
And fellow students who are looking to work on projects as a learning opportunity. If you're not in the context of school and you have to pay for some of those resources, things add up really quickly. And so for something like The Thaw, is our most ambitious short film that we've made. And in making that film, we really wanted to make the jump to being able to pay crew something, still not what they're worth, but to make it more worth their time to go out in the cold for 5 days and four and really dig in the way that they did, is it becomes harder and harder to ask for favors and volunteers and those sorts of things, and under those conditions and at that level of filmmaking, you really want to honor the work, and that really adds up. So we've done several crowdfunding campaigns over the years, which is also a huge amount of work.
Basically a full-time job for a couple months.
For during the campaign, it's really, really time consuming, but it can also be really heartening to see the community support grow over time, from film to film, from project to project. You bring on more people, and that's really special. And you also want to, not let them down when you're making the project. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It
but
definitely does.
yeah, there are many points at which certain privileges make it easier or even possible to make a film, when if we didn't have those resources, we wouldn't have been able to do it.
I think there's so many different factors that come into the budget, but for folks that are maybe trying to make something that's smaller budget, my first advice would be make something really short, and concentrate on like a 3 to 5 minute short, because you can get whatever amount of money you have, you probably have that amount of money, and you're going to spend it on whatever you make. So you're stretching it really, really thin, or you're using more of it on the things that will help make the film feel a little more ambitious or higher quality, or whatever. So that's one of my biggest. And we obviously went the opposite with the Thaw, which could have been like a 20+ minute movie, ended up being 17. But once you get that length, you just need way more money, or you're going to be stretching it so thin, and it's going to kind of show up on the screen. Try to get all that money on the screen is always the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, that checks out. You mentioned crowdfunding, and I know that's like a pretty popular, if not kind of the de facto route at this point for independent filmmakers. Do you have any tips that you could share about running a successful crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah.
Biggest would be talk to Seed and Spark.
Yeah.
Any advice we could give Seed and Spark will give it better.
We've used a couple different platforms, and Seed and Spark is geared specifically towards filmmaking, which from the beginning kind of sets it apart from the more generic platforms, because they understand what it is you're trying to do, and part of their process is that you plan your campaign and you propose your campaign, and they give you feedback on your campaign before it goes live. So if there's anything that they think would hurt your strategy, they'll have you address that before you even start. So you're set up for more success because of that support. But if there is any advice I can give, it's to plan a lot in advance. Plan as much as you can in advance. Have incentives that speak to what your audience would appreciate. Know your audience in that way, and
can I jump off of something up? Or sorry.
Yeah, just one other thing is to be aware of your network, and kind of try to set your goal in relation to what's actually at your disposal, because a campaign going viral is so unlikely. You're really leveraging your friends and hopefully friends of friends. If you're lucky, you can get some of those too.
The chances of going viral and getting a lot of people that are outside of your network to contribute to your movie are very, very small. And I think a lot of people think that's going to happen, and the chances are just, like I said, very small. So it's hard to plan around that. They will also tell you to like reach out to those people ahead of time to try to get a sense of like how much they would contribute and how much is maybe realistic for you to actually raise. For us specifically, with the Thaw, we raised $20,000 about on Seed and Spark, and I would say probably 10 of that was Sarah and I's network, and another 10 of that was our producer Darren's network. that he basically raised. So if you're trying to raise a lot of money, if there are collaborators on your film that are willing to be part of that and really put themselves into the Seed and Spark too, that might be a way to like raise more money. But we feel like we found the max we could probably raise on our own is around 10. That's just us, but
Yeah. And that was at the time, and that can change over time.
and then beyond that, from like a creative point of view, I think of like a Seed and Spark as an opportunity to like creatively continue growing your movie. We thought of our Seed and Spark page as like an expansion of our lookbook, our deck, whatever you want to call them. We really wanted to represent the movie and give the audience a real strong sense of what the movie is actually going to be. So we put a lot of time into like writing the different descriptions and the themes and all these different kinds of things and finding the right photos, but also a really big part of that is the video, the like 2 to 3 minute pitch video, which is basically a pitch video for your movie. And I think a really good advice, that's something that we did, is we went and filmed like a bunch of shots in a snowy area and added some music and VO to like almost be like a pre-teaser of the movie before going into like us talking. And I think that really helped it stand out. I worked in the trail industry in LA, and I basically replicated what we would do for our sizzle reels, which is we would interview the filmmakers, steal a bunch of clips from different movies, cut it all together. But trying to be like short and quick. Some people turn them into like 6-minute things, and they should really only be 2.
A minute and a half if you can manage it.
If you can do it, which is hard. Yeah, that's very, very short.
But you want to evoke the like sense of what your film is going to feel like. You want to give people an idea of what the finished project is going to be.
You don't want them to go look at the page and not really have a sense of like what the movie is going
to feel like.
Yeah. And you want to show, you want to like you want to get like a good camera, a good sound, like make it feel good. Like you can show that we can make something of a certain quality. Give us more money for a movie.
I can imagine people would be less inclined to donate to like a vertical, iPhone video.
Exactly.
At the same time, if you're
that sound,
they're going to contribute ways that might work.
That might work.
But I think it's good to like, it helps you get in the mind of what you're going to do. I also would say do it way before you shoot. Don't do it like 2 months before you shoot, which is what we did in 2020, and then we had to postpone because of COVID. But we raised from January to February, then we're gonna shoot a month later, and it was like we only had a month to do pre-production, and we needed way more time
because the campaign is so time consuming. You want to give yourself time in between.
Raise it, get the money, step away, and then put all your concentration in the movie. Because even when we were doing that month of pre-production, we were also still doing some Seed and Spark things.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you. And so we talked about the Seed and Spark, the fundraiser for this movie. Let's talk about it a little bit more. I'm really excited. I'll share with people who don't know, I was on the selection committee for the White River Indie Film Festival. And so I'm super, super excited that we get to show Sean and Sarah's film, The Thaw, on February 15th is that night that we're going to be screening it. Incredible short kind of folk horror film based in Vermont, but I'm not gonna, you talk about it. Tell me, you can talk about it way better than I can. I just want to say that I'm excited about it, but if you could share a little bit about what The Thaw is.
So it's based on a Vermont legend, which was this kind of tall tale that hill folk would, as a way of preserving resources over the hard winters, they would freeze their elderly and infirm for the winter with a potion and store them and thaw them out in the spring. And that way they could conserve the food that they had access to if they were struggling. So we took this idea, which was printed in the local Central Vermont newspaper in the late 1800s, as kind of like a War of the Worlds style, like true story. And people bought it at the time. People were like, sure, who knows what they get up to out there? Maybe they do freeze folks. and it's just kind of taken on a life of its own and become this Vermont legend. And I've always been fascinated by those kinds of local folkloric stories.
And Joseph
Citro, yeah. And we kind of took the foundation of that story and thought, what if a family tried to do this? What if a family was like struggling and tried to do the potion and it went wrong? What would happen to them then? And so that's where the kind of inspiration for the story came from. And I don't know if folks are going to be watching this before they've seen the film, so maybe that's all I'll say.
Yeah, let's do a spoiler-free. Spoiler-free version.
Yeah, I think it was we were looking to like make a movie based like a very Vermont, bigger, ambitious kind of movie. And Sarah, I didn't know about this story, even though I grew up in Vermont, maybe because I grew up a little more south.
Yeah, it is a very central Vermont,
yeah,
localized story.
And Sarah told me this story, and I was like, oh, well, that's a movie. We should definitely do that. And for me, I think we're really interested in folk horror. We love all kinds of horror, but at the moment, kind of folk horror, because it's like this backdoor into like the human psyche. These kinds of stories kind of act as metaphors to show what people from their time are kind of truly scared about. So at the time, like those people, those farmers in Vermont, those poor farmers were scared of the winter. It was hard to survive that time of year. You had to spend a lot of time gathering your resources. And so they created stories to like represent that. And I think for us,
the isolation too.
And the isolation,
the resources.
So like that story at that time has its own kind of thematic relevance, but I think it's still very thematically relevant, and even about some new things that our movie kind of touches on a little bit subtly under the surface. But it was just a type of genre that allowed us to really tell a scary story with some like world scary things underneath it. Can't talk sometimes.
Talking is hard. It's difficult. So you mentioned a little bit before, 4 days in the cold, and like yeah, this film is it's shot. It's winter. It's cold. There is snow. What was that process like for you and your crew?
Oh my gosh. Well, we shot in March, and we had a blizzard like the day before shooting, when everyone was trying to travel to set, which was not great.
Classic.
Yep, it was a little bit stressful. And it was cold. It was very cold. We had a day where it didn't get above, I think, like 15, 16 degrees, and we were outside for large chunks of the day with like actors lying on the ground in the snow, and it was tough. So we're really grateful to everyone who worked their butts off to get through that. But we shot in Stowe at a homestead, and that the family who owns the home, they were kind enough to really support the whole production. And so we would go up on weekends in advance of the shoot, and Sean would shovel. So much shoveling for all of the outdoor locations that we were using that linked the house to, there's a wood pile to different areas outside that the family uses that all needed to be accessible to not only the characters in the film, but the crew that had to surround them. And then same thing inside the house. I was working to kind of dress the different rooms in the house that we were able to use.
A 19th century period piece.
It's a 19th century period piece in a home that is remarkable for the owner's interest in the history of that time period and kind of replicating and maintaining certain features in the house that made it possible for us to use it as a period location. But also it's their home where they live. And so we're disrupting their kitchen and disrupting their living room and all of these things that they were so kind to allow us to do. So part of what made the shoot possible in the 4 days and the prep day beforehand is how much access they gave us and leading up to it.
Yeah. Something I've thought about, do you have to take any like special precautions as far as like using equipment, like film equipment in those kinds of conditions when it's that cold?
We'd have to ask.
Yeah.
Crew. I mean, like, I assume so.
I assume so.
I
The
know.
lenses need time, right, to adjust to the temperature that they're in if you're moving them from a warm space to the cold or vice versa.
They definitely have to keep track of everything. I remember there was some moments we were filming at night where our cinematographer Demi Waldron, who's amazing, the eyepiece was fogging up, so they couldn't actually see what they were filming. They were filming based on kind of foggy, blurry shapes, and it still came out amazing. That's kind of
so talented.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the major equipment weather things that I remember. But beyond that, we were kind of outside of that world, luckily. That was part of the nice thing about the bigger budget and the bigger crew, is we were less involved in all that kind of technical stuff than we maybe had to be in other movies.
And we had more hands to help us worry about things like keeping people warm enough, and do we have hand warmers, and do we have warming coats and warming locations,
which was our Darren, who we referenced before, was also our stunt coordinator and kind of like safety person. And so
that's really important if you're working in any kind of difficult conditions, like put someone in charge of taking care of people if at all possible, because you'll be so busy with everything else that you really want someone whose job it is to make sure that people are safe.
Yeah, that's great advice. Some of my other questions we've already kind of touched on. I'll go to what advice would you give to other aspiring filmmakers in the area who either are looking to do their first short, or like kind of with you, or like ready to kind of go to that next level of, ambition in their filmmaking?
Well, if they're in Vermont, find out who Michael Fisher is. Michael, he's a really great cinematographer, gaffer, just general lighting person. He gaffed on our movie, and he was just amazing. He has his own grip truck, which comes with like everything you basically need from a lighting and grip perspective. And he's super talented. He is a great collaborator. And he also put us in touch with like everyone that was on the Vermont crew basically was from him, from someone he recommended. Which kind of,
and he's really creatively smart too.
He was
story notes.
Him and Demi, our cinematographers from New York, but they loved working with each other, and it was a really great collaboration. But that kind of, beyond that, like finding your crew is always like one of the harder parts of filmmaking, and kind of depending on the level you are. I think it's just finding the collaborators that you like working with, that have similar sensibilities, finding good people.
And knowing what your personal resources are. Like, do you live in a house with like a really cool meadow beside it that would look really awesome? Or do you know of a cool like cliff that you could go shoot at? Like, what do you know that other people don't know about? Do you have a cool basement in your apartment building? Like what we use for a post-apocalyptic setting. Being creative with your resources, and depending on what scale you're working on, if you can have a story that you can shoot in one day or one weekend, really makes it a lot more feasible for folks
maybe
volunteer their time, to come and help you out for a day or two.
It's different than then it's like a job.
Then it's a job. If you can make it a fun activity instead of a job, then you're going to have a lot more success finding folks who can just come help out, because it is fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
And when Sarah talked about finding those interesting locations and stuff, those kinds of locations can like be free money. If you don't have those kinds of locations, then you need to spend the money like turning not as great locations into something visually interesting, and then that comes with more crew, and it just starts ballooning into something bigger.
But I would also recommend, if you're interested in shooting like a narrative film, be really thoughtful with your storytelling first. I say that coming from screenwriter training, like that was what my master's was in, so I'm a little biased, but I really think that if you can make your story the strongest version of itself on the page before you even start thinking about everything else that it would take to bring it to life, you're going to set yourself up for much more success. And I would recommend that at pre-production stages too. Like once you feel like the script is ready, really kind of getting into the weeds of the details in advance, so you know what what each shot is going to be. Shot list the film. If you are an artist, you can storyboard the film. If you are interested in those kinds of production design questions of like what the space is going to look like, plan as much as you can in advance. Get all of your ducks in a row, and you'll have a lot more success on the day.
So much is happening on set so fast that you don't really have a chance to like stop and think about it, because if you do, you won't make your day. So you have to have planned everything out ahead of time and try to make all those as many decisions as you can ahead of time. There's probably a handful of scenes, because this is like the script is like a 40 scene script for 16 pages, because we write lots of little scenes that are really visual that build. But that means it's way harder to do that than like shoot a 5-minute scene of people talking, where our 5 minutes are like 20 scenes. So we had like a handful of scenes that we felt we could cut on the day if we needed to, and the movie would survive. And we made those choices ahead of time. If we made them on set, they would have been way harder. Maybe we would have mentally been like thinking about them after the fact, versus like we had already kind of made that choice, and we just were like, yep, we'll not do that. We moved on relatively easily. And Sarah talked a lot about pre-production. I'm an editor. So I'll talk a little more about post-production. I think when you film a movie, there's lots of different ways you can kind of like save money. Like you have a small crew or different kinds of things. But when you get into post-production, I'm a big believer in they kind of have to spend the money, because post people aren't as willing.
It's a lot of work.
They don't need to like do the work for free. They have enough work already, and they're talented, and everyone's talented, but there's just kind of
there's fewer sound designers who are sitting around saying, can I have a sound design job, please?
And you want your movie to sound like a movie. So that's one of the places where I'm like, spend the money on a mixer, because like a lot of us probably could sound design a movie. I sound designed probably 80 to 85% of this movie, and then hand it off to someone to elevate it. That's I think good advice. Do as much as you can as an editor,
but then have a professional
finish it. Yeah, to like elevate what you did. Or it's just always good to have more collaborators who have new ideas, because you have only so many ideas, and you want to use everyone's great ideas. And then like same thing with coloring. There's just so much a real colorist can do that you can't even think of, that will elevate how your movie looks and can fix problems that maybe arose from having a lower budget on production. And I also would say spend the time in post. Like you don't have to rush. You can if you
unless
have a deadline.
You do have to rush.
But if it's a short film, there's no real like make the movie as good as you can. I don't follow that advice, because we're usually trying to get a festival deadline, but that's my real
Wow. Incredible. Super, super useful advice. Thank you. And then my last thing is just we've got the Thaw. People are going to be able to watch it in White River on February 15th. But after that, once they get a taste of your filmmaking and they're like, I want more, what's coming in the pipeline? Do you have anything new coming up that you'd like to plug?
Well, our hope for the Thaw is that it will be our last short film. We're really hoping to move into feature filmmaking, and so that's kind of where our focus is right now. And I'm writing for feature length films, but we have several short films on our website that you can go check out at hoopity-pictures.com. And yeah, we're going to be very excited to do more in the future.
Yeah, we're still very much at the beginning of the festival run. We finished the movie in September, and then we went right to Fantastic Fest. And kind of the way the timing of everything, we didn't really get to submit to like any fall festivals, so we were on a little break. But now we're planning on being on the festival circuit for like the next year with this movie. And like Sarah said, kind of
writing,
stepping away from shorts, because it just got to the point where can't afford them anymore. Also, like I think we've made our big ambitious short, shown what we can do. So we're just gonna move on to features. But I do want to say we're very excited about the festival,
Yeah.
and how important I think film festivals are for filmmakers. You mentioned advice for Vermont filmmakers. I would say go to film
Go to
festivals around
festivals.
Vermont, especially one like this one or like Made Here festivals in Vermont that have New England films by New England filmmakers. That's a way to meet maybe your potential collaborators. A lot
Yeah.
of the people that worked on the Thaw are people we met at festivals with other movies, including 2 of our 3 actors. So I would say go to film festivals. I would say go to White River.
Yeah. Come say hi to us.
Come say hi to us. The is the lineup out yet? I've seen it, and the lineup is really good. So like I highly recommend going
So go.
to the festival. And there's awesome events, and yeah, you can come talk to us, and I'm sure other filmmakers and everything. So
Yeah, our schedule is live. You go to riff.org, you can see all of the films we're showing and all of our schedule, because in addition to films, we are also offering filmmaker workshops, brunches to meet with other filmmakers, opportunities to meet Sean and Sarah, parties, we do it all at White River. But yeah, oh, thanks for the plug. That's actually really great advice. Yeah, film festivals are great. Film festivals are great for like so many reasons. And it's like not only do you get to watch incredible films, but I feel like you get to meet so many like-minded people, potential collaborators. Like it's just infinite possibilities there. And it's just like a fun time. But yeah, okay, incredible. Thank you so much for chatting with me and for sharing your wisdom and advice and just like a little behind the scenes peek at what is an incredible film that I'm super excited that people will be able to see soon. Woohoo. Okay, I don't have like a fun outro. I'm just gonna stop this recording. Uh,
I can send you some of the Thaw score if you want to put a
Yes,
very
please put the ambient music for me. Okay,